if you're searching and you know you're not happy, it's funny because I'll see people who aren't happy and who are like, I don't know what's going to make me happier. I don't know what career path is really meant for me. But then they say no to everything still. Like, if you're in that phase in your life, like, you should be saying yes to everything that is slightly potentially could make sense, because those are all data points that you're able to take in and refine, and maybe you meet cool people along the way that end up helping you out later on. But I think it's just short-sighted to say no to things because I don't feel like going out today, or the weather's bad, or I'm tired. Like, so what? Like, I've been tired. I've been tired for 8 years, right? But it's a different kind of tired. It's one thing to be tired, but it's another thing to have low energy, but still be high on life and passionate.
I'm Andre, and this is the Speak Your Life podcast, where we talk about everything as it relates to education, careers, values, mentors, and anything to do with purpose. We do this one impactful conversation at a time, whether it's solo dolo with yours truly or our amazing guests to share stories, industry insights, encouraging words, and calls to action that can help you get closer to your why. Become a part of the Speak Your Life community by subscribing today to the podcast and following us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Speak Your LYFE, because life without your why is meaningless. All right, guys, we are back, and we are here again with another episode helping you to find your why, one impactful conversation at a time. Today's special guest has been an entrepreneur since the age of 12, from selling candy in grade school to investment finance after college to now being a leader in the Kansas City startup community as a youth leadership development for the U.S. Department of State programs to running an internal innovation think tank. In addition to that, he's provided strategic direction as a part of 8 nonprofit board of directors, a founder of this group called 2030 CEO, created to help Midwest entrepreneurs scale faster, and he's also the founder of Rise Fest, which he developed to teach young professionals how to maximize their value and become superstars at work. He is a co-leader with the Kansas City Startup Village, where together they were able to have a 70% entrepreneur success rate, which was realized by 200 million company valuations, as well as with their efforts being highlighted in Fast Company, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, Mashable, and having visits from 80 plus global diplomats, Fortune 500 companies, C-suite executives, and researchers. All that to say, today's guest is not only my cousin, but Ezzy Redwood, the one and only. Welcome.
What's up? Hopefully the listeners are still awake. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Okay.
Too many accomplishments, guys. All right, Ezzy, give us a 5-minute life story of how just growing up, from going from Little Rock, Arkansas, to now here you are in Kansas City. 5-minute life story.
Man, that's difficult. Trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always just said yes to things, and I've tried to solve problems, and that's kind of what my journey has been like. Every once in a while, I'll improvise. So, went to a school East Coast called Williams College. Left there. Thought I wanted to go into law. And I flew out to LA just to meet with this. I didn't have money, by the way. I was a broke college kid as a senior, so I definitely didn't have money. But I used what money I had to fly out to LA and met with the senior vice president of legal for then it was 20th Century Fox, and we met at this great little favorite hangout of like celebrities. So like we had a bunch of celebrities celebrities, and they were eating with us and stuff. That was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
They had great pancakes. They're like bigger than the plate. That was kind of cool too, because I'm a big pancake fan. And he was like, you know what? If you want to be an entertainment attorney, watch Entourage, because it's exactly like that. And imagine yourself being the attorney that has to deal with all that. And it's exactly like that too.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I haven't seen this. So I looked at it. I was like, I don't really want to be about that life. And so I pivoted a little bit more to core, to looking at other types of law. I was fortunate to be able to work my way into a paid law internship with this attorney who's a Yale Law trustee. And at the time, Yale Law was really great. I just haven't followed it now. I don't know if they're still great or not. That's not to say that they're not still great, but at the time they were like at the very top of the law education field. So it kind of positioned myself to live that life. And unfortunately there became a point where I just realized that it wasn't for me. And so I took the last of my money from that paid law internship, and I used that to fly up to Boston for an interview at the marketing firm. Ended up starting very, very bottom and worked my way up to where I was at the end of that year. I was hiring, training, and helping manage offices on Verizon Fios, AT&T Uverse, in Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Boston. And then we ended up transitioning out of that when our parent company went to merge offices. And I was at that point, I had gotten promoted a couple times in that year, and so I was working directly with the owner of the firm. And they were gonna have me under my equivalent at the other company because she was a lot older than I was. I think at the time I was like 19 or 20. So I ended up leaving because I also didn't like her leadership style. I think she gossiped. She played favorites a little bit, and that necessarily wasn't mine. And so I left and came to the Midwest. And long story short, ended up working at a big bank. And then it was Corporate Survivor when the financial crisis hit, and they cut the bottom 10% every week who made the 10% least amount of money for the company. So it was very stressful times. And made it to the quote unquote finals, and then they just cut our office altogether. And there was a Thursday evening where they said, like, hey, the lights are going to be off on Monday.
Oh, wow. And
so that was kind of a interesting time. But yeah, so oil changes door to door because that was pretty sudden, and it was after all the jobs had been taken already by the people who had been laid off already. And sold oil changes door to door with a Jiffy Lube down on Metcalf. For those in the region, you'll probably know the one, 119th, shout out. And one of the and then we got a piece, so I would get a piece of the each oil change people purchased. One of the doors I knocked on was a guy who was in leadership with this company called ServiceMagic.com. They're a big competitor to Angie's List. I think at the time they might have been a little bit larger than Angie's List. Just to summarize, is I also again don't want to bore people, having to turn into an ad for Red Bull or Starbucks or something. So ended up getting that. He offered to get me connected in with his company because he was like, I now care about getting my oil changed in my new car, which I'm pretty sure it doesn't need an oil change, but I like you, so we should have you join my company company, and did that for a little while. Financial crisis caught up to them, and ended up talking my way into a opportunity that required a master's of finance, a requisite experience at an investment bank. I had no finance background. I was liberal arts. I was poli-sci and philosophy of religion double, and international relations and East Asian studies minor concentrations, and so nowhere in there did I ever have to take a finance course, but I was able to add value in the interview and show that I could accomplish the things the CEO was looking to do, from the investor calls and things like that. And I had done hiring, training, managing at that point as well. So then I just kind of talked through like the answers I thought they were going to get from the people who hadn't interviewed yet but were waiting in the lobby. Got it. And then fast forward 2 years, I had just done everything I said I was going to do. Created efficiencies, created lots and lots of dollars in savings. I had helped with training, and done pretty much everything I said I was going to do. And so I left the Youth Leadership Development Program in Central Europe with the State Department as a mentor. That was great. And from there it's just been one challenge after another, whether it's tech company or restaurants or international relations fellowships or community building and ecosystem building.
Awesome. And so knowing that our family has this entrepreneurship mindset with owning restaurants and real estate and things like that, how did that influence your drive to be such a creative, innovative person?
I think I was actually doing a bit of thinking about this today. I think that it primarily just opened up the option to think outside of the box. I think that was the biggest thing. I think the rest, you just kind of have to teach yourself. You kind of have to be okay with dealing with the stress of making the decisions that are required, whether you're in corporate or doing your own thing, that you're going to have to make if you want to be successful, more successful than the average person. And I think a lot of the other aspects you really have to teach yourself. But it did, give me that kind of outside the box thinking, I think.
Yeah. That's good. I think it taught us all a lot of things with you doing a lot of help with the startup companies in that tech industry, that community they here in Kansas City, helping a lot of people in that way. And with me starting a podcast and my own business, I think our family has definitely put a big influence on both of us in a positive way.
But I also want to say that for those people who maybe their families haven't, I think a lot of it is still on you, the individual. I still had to, I don't know about you, but I still had to teach myself quite a bit of things.
Definitely.
And I still took those risks, and I still had to teach myself to fail fast when I did take those risks. And do community building and test these ideas and all the things that are required for you to stand out and stand up. I kind of had to teach myself. So I don't want people to feel like, I didn't come from a family that was like such and such, and so now I'm just kind of doomed to be stuck in the rat race.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. Because there's so many people out there that have different experiences, different backgrounds, and so I think that's so important that what you just said. It really helps a lot of people to understand that whether you come from a background where you've had different family members do startup businesses or whatever like that, or people who have maybe they come from nothing, and there's a lot of people who have so many success stories that aspire to higher things, and we see that time and time again. So there's so many people who come from a varied background experience, so that's really important. Thank you for mentioning that. So I really want to kind of get into a little bit about how you managed to, I guess, find meaning in all the organizations that you're associated with, because you got a lot going on. As we know, you got a great resume. How do you manage to find that meaning, that purpose in each of those organizations?
Yeah, I think I'm really passionate about them. I think there are nonprofits that I really was curious about how nonprofits worked, and more specifically how oversight on a nonprofit would work. And so I think I just said yes to a lot of things. And then those things, in saying yes to those things, I had to teach myself a lot of new skills. And so like it was easy to stay engaged and active when you're having to learn and develop new skills. I think that for some of the other projects, they're solving problems that I'm passionate about. And so it's really helpful in that regard to keep me fresh because I'm solving problems.
Yeah.
And they're problems I care about.
Good. And so what do you feel like, I don't know, got you started into because you went from the finance industry, and what was that one turning point that you were just like, you know what, this is what I want to do. I'm done with finance. I really want to get into the startup tech community.
Yeah, I don't think I knew it. I think that it was partially by chance because I had a roommate who was a programmer for Garmin. He was like salutatorian at RIT, whichever one's in Troy, New York, and he invited me to a hackathon, and I was like, why not?
Yeah.
And so I went, and I was like, oh man, this is really exciting, and this is kind of how you create the future. But I think that it wasn't necessarily that I knew, it was that I did enough things that I was able to figure out what I didn't like, and then hone in on the things that I liked, and try to find career paths, or I should just say paths in general, that could take me to that place.
Yeah.
That it'd take me at least close, even if I didn't know where I was going, because I think there's so many careers out there that it's rare for us to find or just automatically know which one's perfect for us. But I knew I was able to figure out the path that would get me closer to where I wanted to go. And then once I got there, I was able to kind of, hone in once I was in the area.
Yep. Some of the best things in life happen to us that are unexpected. Those things that, or a friend asks us to, come to this event, or we meet this person, or we had this connect at this networking event that we never would have thought would lead to this opportunity or this open door. And so that's awesome that, it all started from just an event that you went to with a friend, and you didn't really expect to get anything much out of it, but here we are today. And
yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like, how often do we just say yes to things, right? If you're searching and you're not happy, it's funny because I'll see people who aren't happy and who are like, I don't know what's going to make me happier. I don't know what career path is really meant for me. But then they say no to everything still. Like, if you're in that phase in your life, like, you should be saying yes to everything that is slightly potentially could make sense, because those are all data points that you're able to take in and refine, and maybe you meet cool people along the way that end up helping you out later on. But I think it's just short-sighted to say no to things because I don't feel like going out today, or the weather's bad, or I'm tired. Like, so what? Like, I've been tired. I've been tired for 8 years, right? But it's a different kind of tired. It's one thing to be tired, but it's another thing to have low energy but still be high on life and passionate.
Yeah, I noticed this word that you keep using, passion. You mentioned that earlier about when we were talking about meaning that you have in all these organizations, and that's a very I would say that's a very strong word, and I love that you are truly passionate about what you're doing, because that makes such a big difference. Because you talked about how there's so many people that maybe are miserable, or just they don't like what they're doing, but they're just saying no to this or no to that. And you having passion for life, having passion for people, that has affected how not only the fact that you open yourself to opportunities and doors, but also when you have opened yourself to those doors, you've been able to not just do like good, you've been able to do great things. And so I remember there was one particular thing I wanted you to kind of mention more about, and that was with the Rise Fast program with the young innovators or the young entrepreneurs. Tell us more about that and how you got started with kids and your passion with that.
So with the with Rise Fast. So I was coming back from doing the 1 year Google Fellowship where we can kind of do whatever we wanted to do. There were 16 of us. And our job description, we're at Google, they're like, just create movements. You're like, that's a lot of pressure. It's supposed to be freeing, but it's also kind of terrifying, right?
Yeah. Simple, like, but not easy.
You're like, that's what I'm getting judged on. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But I actually took leave from that. To do some international diplomacy fellowships, and then I came back from those, and I was just used to traveling around, and I was in the Middle East, and then I was in DC, New York, Atlanta for and then obviously the Bay Area for all of that stuff, and I was just around amazing people, and when I came back to the Midwest, I found that people were kind of closed off, young professionals were kind of closed off, and I was like, man, why aren't they doing all the awesome things I've been around people doing in my travels? And I realized it was because they just hadn't gotten exposed to the mindset, and they didn't have clear paths to the skill sets that were required to do those things. They're just as smart. Like people on the coast will be like, the Midwest or the South because they talk slower or whatever. I'll tell you, I've been on both coasts. I've lived in the South. I lived in the Midwest, like
in California.
Like I was lived in LA, like lived in Boston. Went to school with some amazingly intelligent people. I think 40% of our class, I want to say, had a perfect score on the SAT, ACT, or were in that like elite percentile. But the people in the Midwest are just as smart. In the South, you have people who are really smart. It's just the the exposure to ambition and the focus and drive and competitiveness is very different between the two. And so I wanted to kind of bring in some of that to the Midwest. And so we did this conference, had 22 speakers, which I realized later was a lot. And almost all of those 22 speakers could have headlined other conferences, right? And yet I'm building in this time for them to become friends with, or for, I should say, the attendees to become friends with these people who are over these very prestigious organizations like Walmart or the World Bank. They have very distinct roles within these organizations and would be otherwise kind of unattainable to most people. But it was an experience. I'm really glad that I did it.
Good. The BBC reports a U.S. workers' online study said that nearly 70% agreed public speaking skills are critical for success at work. Maybe you are a student looking to become a prime candidate for that internship, or might I say full-time position, or maybe you have already been in the job market for some time now and you just want to stand out amongst your coworkers looking to get that raise you feel like you've been passed up for too long now. Go to speakyourlife.com/private-lessons. That's speakyourlyfe.com/private-lessons. Again, that's speakyourlyfe.com/private-lessons to become a better communicator tomorrow by signing up today. And so with the kids specifically, what made you just want to start something for kids? Because I know you were talking about bringing that same energy, that same mindset, skill set that the East Coast had, and bringing that to the Midwest in Kansas City. But what made you specifically want to work with kids?
So I worked with kids a lot in the nonprofits. The Rise Fast conference was mainly focused on young professionals, 22 to 35, I'd say. Yeah. But I worked with a lot of organizations that help serve kids because I saw that there were a lot of, kids who their success was not determined by how smart they were. It was determined by their zip code. And it was determined by where they happened to go to school, who their parents happened to be, who their parents knew. Like, I was in the gifted program in one school in LA, and we didn't have all of our books, right? No shade on, the LA public school system at that time. But if the gifted kids don't have all of their books, then hell,
what else are you going to do?
What's the rest of the school look like?
That's an unfortunate set of events.
They're like, you can share a textbook. Really? Like, how's that work when you go home? Like, share a textbook. The textbooks are battered and all this other stuff. So it was just kind of crazy. And then I go from like that school to one of the like really nice schools in LA, and just seeing like it wasn't necessarily that the kids were different. It was the opportunities were different for them, and the expectations were different, and the surroundings were different, and so that really made me want to focus in on kind of helping those people who are at a crossroads and whose opportunities aren't necessarily in their control.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point you made there, and there seems to be the same connection, the same theme with the kids, or whether it be from just adults growing up in certain regions or certain zip codes that you mentioned, of how not just the difference between certain people is not really even their IQ or their skill set, so to speak, but more so opportunities that they're given. And so that can vary based on the location or the region of which somebody is. And so that's interesting, and it's so true, because unfortunately certain people in certain communities are not getting those opportunities, those same equal opportunities to be able to succeed and thrive in, whether it be in business or other fields. And so that's great that you're able to tap into that and try to pull people in, pull the kids in that are the future of not just the U.S. but the world, in which we have our innovations for what's to come that will help us.
Yeah, I mean, I had friends who were extremely high IQ, and if they had been in different surroundings, probably could have, gotten into Harvards and Yales and all that stuff. Yeah. But instead they were banging, right? Yeah. In Little Rock and Los Angeles, and this is because that's where they were, and those were the opportunity sets they had, and they chose the options that they felt like would get them the closest to their goals. Because they didn't see a path. Like, students can understand when, whether it's junior high or high school or whatever, you can understand when your school's under-resourced. Like, when you're not getting the same education as, like, the school, this other school that's sponsored by Starbucks or Chick-fil-A or something. Like, you know this. And so you're not being dealt a fair hand. And so it's like, well, then what? Are they preparing me for, like, being who I want to be in the real world? And if the answer is no, then you try to figure it out yourself. Then you look at your surroundings for answers, right? You look to your surroundings for answers, and that can turn out a few different ways. Yeah,
that's so true. So, and that's great that you have done your best to provide as many resources, opportunities, and other mentors to kids who may not have those mentors just as family members. So
yeah, I think I've moved into a space now where I'm trying to do more like, I mean, at the sacrifice of money, I'd say, I've turned down some very large, like, pay
lucrative
very well
opportunities.
Paying, job opportunities. But I really want to focus now on solving like really big problems like crime and some other things that I think, like, if I don't solve them, then I don't know who else will.
If not you, who?
Yeah. And I think, honestly, I wish more people would focus in on things like that. I think we have a lot of brilliant people who narrow themselves into making money or into doing things that aren't necessarily directly beneficial for society. You know, like I'm very glad that Jasmine, for example, started Goodr, like GOODR, you know, to solve hunger. Right? And they've done some amazing work. But imagine if she hadn't, and if she just said, yeah, I'm fine just planning these events for, you know, celebrities. Right?
Yeah, I remember seeing it was like some kind of piece from NPR on that program Goodr in Atlanta, and so it was really cool to just hear about that on the radio, and just hearing what they do, because there's so many restaurants. We're exposed to the restaurant industry, and so we know how that is when you have leftover food and, you know, you got to throw it away, you got to do something with it. So basically it's just awesome how she has taken all that food and has given it to people, and just not provided food, but giving them meals, like giving them something that they can look forward to, because there's so many people out there that just they need something to put in their stomach. So no,
and I mean, she's just also a really great person. I think I was moderating something for the Opportunity Hub, OHub. Shout out OHub. And she was on right after me, and just a great, you know, very down to earth, very brilliant person. You know, but we need more of the, you know, more people like that. You know,
humanitarians.
And not saying that they have to go, like, you know, make that their life's mission immediately, but, like, you know, get your experience, gain skills that you can then apply in the network, and then apply that to, you know, trying to solve, you know, some problems in a meaningful way.
And so we have talked about just a lot of things when it comes to creation and businesses and startups and things like that. And so this whole concept of innovation, how has that played a big part in your life? Just here you are in your 30s, and how's that concept of innovation like played out? Just personal life, business life, how's that played out?
I mean, I think that a lot of the opportunities that I've gotten thus far are because I said yes, and then once I said yes, I tried to think creatively about how I could add value within what I was doing. And I think that that's something that's missing in a lot of people's career trajectories, and they're wondering why they're not where they want to be. And it's because you probably just either you haven't said yes, or you haven't thought creatively enough about how you can add value for the organization, for their mission, for the bottom line, or all of the above. Right? If you want to propose that they help out with, you know, some kind of humanitarian thing, or help minorities, or do whatever, like try thinking creatively about how to do that while also helping their bottom line. You know, because I don't see that a whole lot, and that would be, you know, something that as a boss or a boss's boss, they're thinking about. And so you guys end up, you know, talking different languages. And so I think that innovation and creativity has come in, like, trying to figure out how to make things a win-win-win, you know, and part of that's thinking, you know, how do I accomplish this while also designing the best solution for what I want to accomplish. And also, how do I make my boss and my boss's boss look good throughout the process? And that's been a learning curve, right? I didn't always think like that, but I found myself much more successful when I was able to think like that. And there's so many people, when we talk about innovation, you know, the first thing we always think of is Silicon Valley, and that's great, and I think it's impacted the whole world a lot, but I think people also can realize that they can have innovation in right where they are, whether it be in Kansas City, whether it be in, I don't know, Alabama, or wherever they are. So that's so important that people can create and just innovate where they are, and they don't have to move to New York City. They don't have to move to, I don't know, California to
be innovative. So.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's harder in those places because you have high rent, and it's hard to think creatively when you think about paying the rent, right?
Mortgage.
Yeah. If you can afford to buy something there, it's so much easier to do it when like your cost of living is really low and you're able to keep it next to nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think, it goes back to
that way.
Being able to put in the work as well. So I think that would be like the third component, because I found that a lot of people just work their job and then they go home and they watch the national average 5.4, I think, hours of television a day. Like they consume 5.4 hours of content a day. And they're like, well, I don't have time for it. So what? You better not be caught up on any shows then, right? Like you can't.
Game of Thrones,
right? Yeah, but all the Will and Grace episodes, or Friends, Empire, The Wire. Like I just go on and on, right? It's like if you want to do great things, you've got to sacrifice some time to do it, and I find a lot of people aren't doing that. Like some of the, I don't think that I would have gotten invited to the White House Economic Forum if I hadn't been putting in so much work that was trying to drive creative new ways of solving problems forward that people then noticed and recommended me for, or caught some people's attention. So just think about, if you want to do great things, you've got to work more than the average person. Otherwise you're not going to accomplish anything more than the average person. They're average because they are content with putting in the average amount of work. So if you want above average results, you've got to put in above average work. Yeah. And come up with above average solutions, which come from exposure and research and working and trying things, and those things not working and you iterating and asking people why, and gaining a lot of expertise. Yeah.
And part of that comes with sometimes a jumbled schedule, a busy schedule. It can feel that way sometimes, and so I know you experience that a lot. Busy schedule. How do you manage, or any suggestions to our audience for how do you manage a busy schedule, or when you're saying yes to opportunities, or when you're just trying to find your way through the career path?
Yeah, I mean, I think that so I can answer this from a perspective of getting more out of your day. I think that looking at your day, even if you work a full-time job, right? So you're at work 8, maybe 9 hours a day. So if you work those 8 or 9 hours, you still have 24 hours in that day. Yeah. And so, you have that, let's say 24 minus let's say you have an hour lunch break. So we'll say it's 9 hours. So that's what, 15 hours you have left after you work. And then you take out, let's say you like a lot of sleep. Let's say you sleep 8 hours a day, right? So that's 15 minus 8, so you have 7 hours, right? So now what are you doing? Let's say you spend 2 hours in transit, so 6 hours, 5 hours, and let's say that you spend an hour eating, so now you have 4 hours, right? And let's say you spend like an hour like getting ready or something, or cleaning or whatever, whether in the morning or when you come home. A lot of people don't. We'll just pretend like you do. So that's then 3 hours, right? Yeah. Of like time that you usually spend, just kind of not doing a whole lot of stuff that's super productive, whether that's TV or just lounging or talking on the phone or on Facebook or whatever, or Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram. Insert your whatever. Yeah. Right. So let's say if you just took those 3 hours and you committed to a time frame of, for 2 months, I'm going to commit to being great. Right. And you say, okay, so for those 2 months, I'm going to take those 3 hours a day. and I'm going to let's say even on the weekend, even though you don't have all the other time and distractions, we'll say it's still 3 hours. So we're going to take those 3 hours a day. So that's 7 hours. That's 21 hours a week. So that's what 42. That's 84 hours a month. So we're going to take 84 hours a month and really hone in on something, getting good at something, right? If you do that for 2 months, now you're in a space where you're a completely different person than you were 2 months ago, and you can do completely different things. Yeah. Right? Whether that's learning a program,
or a new language,
anything, like anything, if you just replace that time you're watching TV or YouTube clips or World Star or whatever with like that,
or unless it's lynda.com or you're learning how to do something, that could be different.
Yeah, for sure. But you do that and it'll help you be on that path to be more successful just by way of doing that. Like people are like, I don't have time. Yeah, you do. Right? Unless you have kids, right? You have time, right? If you don't have kids, you have time.
That's right.
And I know people, to be honest, with 3-4 kids who still figure it out. Now, maybe it's like an hour before they go to bed. So that's 7 hours a week, but I know people who run entire companies with 3-4 kids and do other things. So I just try to figure out the how instead of saying I just can't.
Yeah, and that's a part of like what you value, what you they say that who you are can be measured by what you love, and so. What you love is it has a lot to do with your values and what you place value on. And so with this whole concept of this podcast, we talk about how to look at your life like a house and to understand that the foundational pieces is vital to having a strong house, a strong holding to be able to withstand any storm or anything that you face in life, any challenges or anything like that. So what would you say that one of the foundational pieces in which your house stands on, if that represented your values?
I think that's a good question. I'm going to stall by adding something else to the last question.
Okay.
In that, like, in order to maximize your time, it's helpful to look at your diet because, so much of who we are, whether it's our energy levels or our health or whatever, come from our gut. And so I noticed that when I was like planning a conference in 4 months, which people take a year to do, like for already established conferences. So it's kind of crazy. But like, I realized that like I had to stop eating red meat. Right, because like it would make me sleepy. I had to like really kind of optimize my diet, take out the grains, do things like that. So think about like what will help you be the most successful from energy consumption perspective. So that's what I would say along that. In terms of the house foundation, I think it's just asking why and really trying to innovate and fail fast with things so that you can kind of evolve into the right solution. I mean I think solving problems is that value.
Okay. And why is that?
I mean, I think for me, like someone asked me a couple days ago, what's the meaning of life? And I was like, that's a good question. And I thought about it, and I think it's moving forward and making progress because there's nothing that's living or even otherwise in the universe that's not growing or moving or evolving. Yeah. Even the planet and trees and things like that, everything's constantly growing, and I think that's for us, like that's what brings one of the things that brings happiness is progress. But it's like, how do you achieve that, right? And it's like you have to solve what's kind of holding you back in order to move forward. So
okay. Good. That's a good answer. Wow. I appreciate that. And so that leads us to our last segment, which is the question of the day. All right. So this is just a little random question just to get to know you a little bit better. So what celebrity would you go on a date with if you had the opportunity to go on a date with any celebrity out there?
that's the sound of me thinking. I'm like, man, I don't know, man.
Myself?
Bro, I'm not a celebrity.
Not yet.
And part of it too is like I'm like not up on all the celebrities, so I'm thinking through like, all right, well, she's married, she's.
Well, okay, let's just say that if they're if any celebrity who is technically married right now, if they were just available right now.
I like Jessica Alba's like work ethic. I think that like that would be a cool person. Yes, so maybe I'll go there.
Okay.
I'm like I have to like think about that one. I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
Oprah.
Yeah.
I go Oprah. Yeah.
She'd be your sugar mama.
I mean, I think that we both, be able to bring some things to the table.
Yeah. Good.
Media's changing. No, I'm joking. I'm sorry, Oprah. I'm sure you're at the cusp still.
All right, guys, that leads us to the conclusion of this episode today. Thank you for joining. We just want you to also, if you're interested and you're in the Kansas City area and you need innovation help, you need help with your startup, be sure to hit Ezzy up on LinkedIn. You can find him at EZE Redwood. That's REDWOOD. Find him on LinkedIn. Be sure to just message him about any questions you may have. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us on today's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you've not already, and follow us on Instagram at SpeakerLYFE, because life without your why is meaningless. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll look forward to having you again on the next time.